And we are live for another episode of The Noise Floor. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Today we have the one, the only, Axel Grell, legendary headphone designer, formerly of Sennheiser, and now with Grell Audio. And also, Jermo Koehnke. Am I saying that right? All right.
Jermo, you're muted.
Jermo's muted, yeah.
Sorry, but you did it perfectly.
Okay, excellent. Today we're going to talk about all things to do with, all kinds of different things to do with headphone design. And so it's going to be a fun technical discussion. Of course, I have with me Blaine and Griffin as well.
We should probably also mention that both of them are now with Grell Audio.
Yes, both Jermo and Axel are now with Grell Audio. So we're going to get into that here momentarily. Just before we get going with the stream here, once again, a reminder to folks, this stream is brought to you guys by Headphones.com. Headphones.com makes all of our content here possible. There is a 365-day return policy on Headphones.com, so if you guys want to support us, consider checking out Headphones.com, and you can buy with confidence, knowing that you will have a long window to potentially return the items that you buy if you do not enjoy them sufficiently. We also have a forum, forum.headphones.com. That's where we post the topics usually that we pull for this stream. But today, obviously, we have not pulled from that because it's a bit of a special stream. And also, this podcast is available on podcasting platforms like Spotify, if you guys want to listen without having to see our smiling faces. But you should see our smiling faces because we have some handsome folks from Grell Audio here today. I think that's basically it for all of our shout-outs. I think we are ready to get going with the live stream. Do you guys have, Griffin and Blaine, do you guys have specific topics you want to ask first, or do you want to just launch in with our topics?
I mean, first of all, how are you guys doing?
Yeah,
it's a good place to start.
Yeah,
good.
Axel. Yeah,
good so far. So it's good to be in the stream. It was a lovely day. So we have in Germany sunny weather. Spring is there. Yeah, so great.
Yeah, same for me. So really, it's for me the perfect weather if it's like I don't know, below 20 degrees, but really sunny. So it's not getting too hot, and I can deal with cold a little bit better. So this is for me the ideal time of the year, and it lasts for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, a little bit of a shoulder season. We're all kind of
enjoying it.
we're all kind of spread out around the world, but you guys are in Germany. Whereabouts are you guys located right now?
We are in Hanover or close to Hanover. So Jermo is in Hanover. That is 20 kilometers west, and I'm in a small town called Burgdorf. And fun fact besides, so this place had been 30 years ago or 40 years ago already, the place where the biggest headphone factory in the world had been. So the Sennheiser factory at that time was the biggest headphone factory in the world. But okay, that's all closed down, and when all the headphones went to Ireland first. So, okay. But yeah, and this is my hometown.
Nice.
I was going to say, I remember the name from when you were talking about your work on the 580 and how you were just kind of in your hometown making headphones, which is really cool.
Now the headquarters is 23 kilometers north from here. So here was only the factory. So I had to travel to the headquarters every day. But for a while I had 2 offices, one here, one there. Okay. So it's...
Got it. Cool.
Speaking of headphones that you guys have designed, folks in the chat are asking what headphones we're all wearing. And I do want to give a shout out that we are all wearing headphones that have been designed by Axel and Jermo for some of these other ones as well. So Jermo has the 505 from Sennheiser. I have the 550 on. Axel has the OE1 from Grell Audio. Blaine has the HD800, the original HD800, non-S, and then Griffin has the legendary HD600.
Okay.
6XX.
Or 6XX, sorry. So for folks who are unfamiliar, these two gentlemen have been involved and been sort of the designers, or had oversight over some of the best headphones in the world, the most legendary headphones in the world. And so we are very grateful to be able to chat with them today about all things headphones and acoustics. Really looking forward to some of your guys' insight on this stuff. And actually, this stream was somewhat prompted by, I believe, some of the things that you guys have been putting out on your new YouTube channel. Yeah, you guys have put together some videos there about things like it's not just all frequency response, and it's there's a benefit to openness, where you guys talked about a bunch about that.
Yeah, and also the video, the first one was about is more bass better, which I think is a very good place to start.
Yeah, so why don't we start there? Blaine, do you want to launch us in with the initial salvo of questions?
So the proximate cause of this is that I wanted to examine some of the claims in the second video on a stream where we can both shoot back and forth instead of our usual methodology of making a video. We'll make a stream calling you out, and then people harass you on social media, which did work very well with ratings, but PR asked that we not do that again.
Can you be clear about which one the second video is? The second video is the openness one?
Yes.
Okay.
So and I would recommend anyone to watch it because it's quite interesting. Maybe not the easiest consumption for someone who's new to headphones, but it's a good primer on what animates the OE1 and some of the philosophy of design of Axel Grell. The sort of core contention, I would say, is that beyond the measurable transfer function of headphones at the eardrum, the frequency response, there's another dimension of our perception of sound, which is related to the closedness or openness of our ear, right? So that when there's a pressure chamber there, we perceive that and it changes our perception of sound. And that's cited to, I should remember his name in full. The student now, I think, no longer at the University of
Roman Stieper?
Roman Stieper.
Yes. University of Hanover, so Leibniz University Institute for Communication Technology. We are working together with this institute for some other things as well. And yes, Roman did a lot of research on openness, reflection, sending waves out of a resonant tube, having a silicon ear at the end, and sending it into a headphone, and then measuring what is coming back, all this. And yeah, so there are a lot of papers, I think 3, written by Roman. And yeah, when you want to dig deeper into it, it's really interesting. It's really interesting the outcome of his measurements. And when you compare that, what you feel, so compare it with your perception of this openness. And for me, it correlates very, very well. I think, I know for some others as well, but it's not something where we say, okay, we need to continue to work on that. So it's not ready yet, so that we can say, yes, this openness relates to this perception exactly, or for the majority of test subjects. Yeah.
So that's sort of the thing I was hoping to tease out a bit here. Obviously, the commanding majority of people aren't going to read those papers. I've read, I think, 2 of the 3. I read the one where they talked about the methodology of the impedance test jig, and I read the one which I think was related to the listening test, which had the HD 800 and a Bose QC or some other ANC headphone. Yeah. I haven't read the 3rd, which is embarrassing. Oops. But what would you say are the significant conclusions of what we have thus far from that? And how confident are you guys? Because obviously, like, in a short video, when you're trying to talk to lay people, you don't really want to have all the, well, this is roughly what we know, and this is the percentage chance that it's right thing. You sort of keep it to, this is the facts. But here you have time to expound.
to make it very simple, so with the open headphone, you don't have this feeling that there is some, that is unnatural, that there is something, blocking your ear. We know that is not 100% proven, but some people are reacting with the contraction of their stapedius muscle. So, when they have closed type headphones, so things like that are happening. Not to all, but this is the hearing is irritated when it is blocked or separated from its natural ambience. But I guess when you're wearing every day and always closed type headphones or in-ears, you get used to that. So that there might be a learning effect as well. But we are not born for a reason with the AirPods Pro in our ears. So
not yet. Anyway.
Now, see, if Griffin had his way,
it
would be.
I don't know about that. I'd rather nothing in my ears. Thank you very much.
So I'm a very... So you see, I'm wearing glasses. My eyes are not too good, but my hearing is good. So when I'm blocked from my ambience, I'm irritated a lot. So I prefer... So when I work, of course, and I need to use closed types, it's not a problem. But for enjoyment, whatever, I prefer open types. So it's because I can hear other things as well, all the other things as well.
So that's interesting. Because that's interesting, because that's like slightly different than what I sort of took as Schleeper's conclusion, because like the QC, like the ANC headphones also tested pretty well, and that one is purely because of the acoustic Z, even though there's no feed.
Yeah, that's the... So, but my perception is that thing. But newer measurements they did with the AirPod Max and when you try the AirPod Max, it gives you this impression as well that everything's very wide, and that relates very well with the newer measurements as well.
Interesting.
So you gave a talk not that long ago at CanJam that was sort of related to openness as well, or that was one of the factors that you were.
You mean his second to last talk?
Yes, the one in New York.
No, the one in New York was about target curves.
Yes, but there was a portion of that had where openness was sort of the key part of it. And I guess what I would wonder is if one of the outcomes here could be that for a closed back headphone, you would have a different target curve from a very open one, or then even within the category of open headphones, you could have, something that is like more low acoustic impedance, more open, resulting in a slightly different like variation of that versus a high acoustic impedance type design. Do you think that's something that would be an outcome from this, where if it turns out that there's a general trend for how people respond to closed back or, acoustic impedance generally?
Yeah, there is already a difference between in-ears and around ears. There must be a reason for that. So in-ear is a very closed thing. So the ear canal is completely blocked and shortened and detuned, and so everything is completely different to what you are normally hearing when it's not blocked. And yes, I'm sure there is a different target curve for closed ones than for open ones. But in the end, and this is maybe so New York CanJam, I give this presentation about target curves, thinking on and on. I think target curves are something very, very... So everybody has this individual target curve. And when we look at the Hammond curve, okay, a Corolla maybe fits for the majority of us. It brings you from A to B, a Toyota Corolla as a car. But
it's my car.
but not mine. So
Yeah, Toyota Corolla is not a great headphone.
Oh, but it's a great car. I love it.
yeah, but I think for a lot of people, it's a great car, but not for everybody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's good to find some kind of average.
Mhm.
But when you see the differences in frequency response, not perceived, but measured frequency responses at the eardrum,
Mhm.
that need to be reflected somehow. And I try to make a proposal for that, so that the interaction of the headphone with the geometry of the individual ear is in a factor. And so let's see how to include that.
Yeah.
Some ideas, but in between, I have to develop headphones and sell headphones. And
Mhm.
yeah, so research and thinking about that is a big part of my life, but time is limited.
I guess where my brain kind of goes with that stuff is the idea of like, if people are compensating for certain kinds of acoustic impedance conditions in terms of their preference, right? Like, and what we might see is trends in preference that emerge as a function of, you know, like a variety of different acoustic impedance conditions across people.
And there,
Did we
Hello?
lose Blaine?
He's
certainly
frozen.
froze quite
Yeah.
aggressity.
With this
Oh,
conversation
have I
shorted his
disconnected?
brain. Ah, he's back.
No, this is my internet. I'm at a new house. I'm using a Comcast modem router right now, so it's not going super good. Sorry about that. What I was going to say is you're sort of assuming that you can compensate for this, right? That this is an effect which has a linear effect on preferred response,
Mhm.
whereas some of Axel's contention here would be that this is simply always less preferred, right?
Okay, gotcha. So regardless of whatever trend in you know, preference there is, you know, there's a binary kind of
There's a metaphor from history I want to bring up here, and it's a very, very old one. Back in, I think, the 1920s or 30s, there was a study that found that people preferred loudspeakers with the response that fell as a function of frequency.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, thanks, Blaine.
It's
That's
amazing.
great.
I have to think about it for
But
a
everyone's
while.
like, oh, that doesn't make sense. You know, response to things that are
Oh,
recorded.
you cut out again there.
Yeah,
Sorry,
cut out. So they fall as a function of frequency. Did he freeze again? Oh my god.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right. Should
But
we?
anyways,
Yeah, go ahead.
I would actually build up on that. And I think what we found also in the past is that like older people seem to value soundstage more than younger people. And
Oh,
I think we have seen that phenomenon that younger people have really grown up with things in their ears.
Interesting.
Literally. And I think that was very rare 30 years ago that you would have etymotics or anything else high quality. So I do believe there is a strong learned aspect to it, or not. But now, Blaine, let's hope your connection now works.
Yeah, no, they're trying to shut me down.
Yeah. What do you know?
So the study was, and this is ancient, found that people preferred like a quite aggressive low pass, like a first order low pass at like 1 or 2 kilohertz, which is horrifying from a sound quality perspective now. But here's the thing. Obviously, the first contention was, oh, that's just what people like. Then somebody made an acoustic first order low pass, and they showed that same preferences with loudspeakers and amps and stuff. Then they put musicians behind it, and then that behind an acoustically transparent screen. And they showed that people drastically did not prefer real music from it. And the reason there was they liked the falling response because the distortion products, both the intermodulation and the harmonic ones, were mostly high in frequency, the audible ones. And the loudspeakers and amplifiers of that era were so bad in terms of distortion that it was changing the preferred response.
Yeah.
Right. And this is like this is ancient. This is something that would never be true anymore. But I think that that's sort of where.
No, that makes sense. You wouldn't.
That's where I would think that Axel is falling on different acoustic
Yeah.
Like acoustic impedance is bad, but there may be things that somewhat compensate.
Yeah.
It definitely have an influence on what we are hearing or how we are perceiving things. And so I think preference is one thing, and the other thing is what are we able to measure. So things that where we don't use music and say what does sound better or worse, but when we do Subjective tests use signals like sine tones, noise, filtered noise, whatever. So to keep this preference factor out, because there are a lot of learned things, but when you have to just compare signals and say, is that as loud as this, or is this as loud as that, this preference thing goes out. And yeah,
but in the end, isn't what we care about what people actually like? Like if the loudness matched things doesn't yield a headphone that I prefer to a headphone that was made with a different method, then it's worse, right?
In my opinion, it's two different goals. So one is having real acoustic research in a sense and expanding the knowledge, really for something that is eternally true in a sense. And the other thing, so really preference, which is also the motivating factor for Harman, is to find what sells better.
But I mean,
and I think that can change.
That is changing over the decades. So when you this thing with the cutoff this way around, cutoff of high frequencies in the 20s, and when you see the sound, how it develops, depending on the technology that is available from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s with the CD, where now we can do real high frequencies. Now we can do really a real bass because we are not limited by the cutting of records and things like that. So, and how strange for people that were grown up as me with reel-to-reel tape recorders and records, CDs sounded first. So there were bad recordings, true, but it was all, this is not the normal thing. And after a while, we were used to hear that, but the sound really changes. And in the 90s, it was different, and so on and so on. It's always changing over time. Music styles play a role as well, for sure. So when you
this is sort of the Floyd Toole circle of confusion thing, right? The music is a moving target, and it's changed by the technology of its era.
Yeah. So when you would see the big amount of bass and really low bass in hip hop, for example, so that was never present before. So and to make that available from headphones, from speakers, it's not that easy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I mean, like this preference research is still very valuable. So it's not demeaning to say that that's what Harman did is not really cool, because in the end they did a lot of statistical research in a sense that has never been done before, and in a sense they've proven that an HG600 with added bass is just something that will please 70% of people, and I think that's really good to know.
You didn't attend my seminar.
It was because the HD800 was more preferred, even though it deviated more.
Oh yeah.
So the reason is because I dedicated my second seminar. Oh wait, were you at New York? Maybe you weren't.
No.
Jermo was not in New York. No.
Yeah. So
Not yet.
We need to publish that, by the way.
Next time, please. That would be great. I would love to meet Jermo in person.
Coming soon. I reanalyzed the data. In fact, 100% of people either preferred the Harman target the most or preferred it essentially equally with everything else. The distinction was that some people had really different other preferences.
Mm-hmm.
But the Harman target always scored well. 100% of the sample that I can account for with the data that I stole from Sean, because he won't give me the source data.
So it wasn't always the best, but it was always good. Always
the only people for whom it wasn't the best were the people who rated a very large number of things very highly scored. So the people who were not very discerning listeners, basically.
Yeah. The weird takeaway for me with all of that, though, in your presentation, Blaine, was the section that showed that there were headphones that looked visually further away from the Harman target that ended up being more preferred, like the HD800.
Yes,
which
so
to me is,
for me, a surprise as well.
Yeah.
When Sean said that the HD800 scored really well in his stuff, that was actually what inspired me to go back and look at some of the underlying data, because I was like, intuitively, I just been thinking, oh, I'm just a weirdo, right?
You're
but then
not.
it turns out that actually my preferences are much more mainstream than I thought.
Yeah.
In spite of you
Aw.
guys gaslighting me.
Yeah.
No, I think that makes it more congruent with kind of what my normal thinking would be, which is that a ton of people love that headphone. Like, it's one of the most famous headphones in the entire audiophile space for a reason.
For good reason.
Yeah.
Now, Blaine, actually had a question for you. For that particular result, what was the replicator headphone?
For that particular result, the replicator headphone was, I believe, an AKG K712.
Yeah, it was the K712.
Now, what I'm wondering is, in situations like that, what would the effect of the acoustic impedance difference be?
Yes, well, there is this question, right?
This is an
And
unanswered question.
This is something that would require research, hopefully research that Axel might be party to, even if he's not necessarily doing all of it himself, seeing what the interaction of acoustic impedance and preference is when frequency response is held constant, and conversely, what frequency response preferences manifest at different acoustic impedances. And I think that that's a fairly important one, because again, we listen to headphones to hear music, right? So if the music doesn't sound good, nothing else matters.
Yeah, that's very true. So I think that is something, the most important thing, and that is what drives me, is that the music sounds good. So in the end, it's music, and we are just some, transport medium that brings the music to the ears in a way. And so I didn't start it with headphones. So I started with loudspeakers, and I tried to make loudspeakers in my diploma thesis. That is something in between bachelor and master thesis. It's something German and long time ago. And so I made loudspeakers that could replicate the full spectrum from 16 hertz to 20 kilohertz, 22 kilohertz. So they were just digital, really large beasts. And but I didn't. So my main target was to create sound with the speakers in a way that it sounds like the orchestra or the band or whatever is there. But I never achieved that. So it's really there's a guy playing guitar, or there's someone playing the piano, and you can hear it from maybe the piano is played on the first floor and you're somewhere on the third. You hear it through the corridors, but you can see it's a real piano. And you hear it. But when you hear a piano with headphones, you hear, okay, that's a recording. Of course, there is this whole chain recording with microphones, going to console, having all these compressors, whatever signal, and you have someone who is creating the sounds. So my target then changes to, okay, it is not to replicate the music, how it is played live, but how the recording artist, so call him like that. So he's creating, or she is creating a sound. Good song works without good sound. So that works just the music and the words, whatever the lyrics. But this thing that sounds brings, that's, oh my God, so that sounds great. That is a different dimension. And this is created by these recording artists. And so my target is, since many years now, okay, to bring that to the ears of the people listening to the recording.
And this brings us to one of the questions that we have for you, Axel. In the last little bit, we've become more familiar, as a result of also your YouTube videos. We've become more familiar with the things that you are looking into, as far as like ways to bring whatever this something experience. And you mentioned a few things, one of them being the openness thing, but also, there's other things that you talked about, like, position and angle of the driver and so on. Treble timbre from this specific, frontal direction, perhaps. But the question would be, is there a sonic characteristic that you've always felt was misunderstood or underappreciated by the general public, and maybe how that relates to this thing that you're always searching for?
Yeah. So I think the most important is that customers or listeners are just trusting their own ears. And I already said, okay, this frequency response curve is very individual and it's different from person to person. And so for some headphones, especially in-ears, you can say that something that sounds really good for one person has a good frequency response on the eardrum. For one person has a very good frequency response for other person. So that it could really sound good for someone, and for someone else it's really bad. For the bigger the headphones are, the bigger the diaphragm area is, or the closer it is to a natural sound field, the more it sounds similar to different persons. My first headphone was a HD 580s for Sennheiser, so that develops into a lot of things. I think the last iteration Jermo is the HD 660 S2. I was not involved with that, but
it's my fault.
Yeah. Well done. Great. And I tried with that already to bring, for example, this amount of bass that you can hear when you're listening to music without speakers, or when you're in live concert. Oh, we have a new presenter there.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was making a fuss.
So this amount of bass, to bring that to the ears, not only to the ears, to perception. And that's not that simple. So that 580s at that time had more bass than all the AKGs, for example, a lot of biodynamics, and so on, and all the older Sennheisers as well. So at the same time, it has less intermodulation and things like that. I have a recording that I'm still using. There's an organ recording where may know Also sprach Zarathustra, where this doom 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 things, 2001. This movie and this music, but this is a thing just for organ, and so the very low tones, so 16 hertz is played, and at the same time the higher things. And when I was listening to that with the first prototypes of HD 580s, I felt the floor trembling under my feet.
Hell yeah.
And I thought, no, could not be, because there were no speakers, no subwoofers, nothing, just the headphones. I took the headphones off. No, there's nothing trembling. So put it on again. I felt it trembling again. And I think this is something our brain is doing. And I never told anybody about that, because I thought, no, I'm crazy in a way. But later I read somewhere, I think it was in Headphone or somewhere, that he had exactly the same impression. And then I said, okay, so our brain knows when it perceives these low tones with that amount of sound pressure, there must be something trembling. And when you're going to just a concert with classical instruments, so just acoustical instruments, just touch the next seat or something, you will feel things are really trembling. So this is what you know, what your brain knows. And what I wanted to achieve in the bass response is, okay, there should be the bass should be perceived as if all the chairs and everything are really vibrating when the organ is playing the low tones.
Yeah.
Okay, this is one thing. So HE800 is different a little for a reason. So at that time, one thing we wanted to do is to do something with a dynamic driver that is as good or better than electrostatic headphones. And then you see the tuning or hear the tuning of electrostatic headphones. So at that time, there were a lot of Strax headphones with at that time it was not their best time. So the quality was so now they are doing a much better job, I think. But at that, and so we could do something that was better than some Strax headphones with the HD800 for a price. So when you see the headphones plus the tube amp and everything that you, or the high voltage amp you need, for yes, so it's for a price that was lower, and but the sound impression was not that different to electrostatic one. So
I would say better.
Yeah, yes, of course. But a great electrostatic is even better, I think. So so HE1, okay, is when I listen to it, it's really something. Oh my God, I start crying. So and I've seen that many times when I made presentation. Jermo, you may have the same experience that people are listening to this headphone and they have a very direct access to the music. Great electrostatic headphones can do that, but I don't know why. it's not the price tag, so that makes you cry as well. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I get the sense that for a lot of the things that you're interested in, it's sort of anchored to the idea that music is a perceptual phenomenon, not just an auditory one. You know?
Yeah, it is.
And so all these other things are just it's like, why do we just stop at the auditory one when we're researching this stuff and we're looking into it and we're designing products? Which is cool.
And I would even go beyond and say it's not just like what we perceive, but really all the gaps our brain fills in. So the headphones do like 70% of the job, and they miss a little bit. But if you close your eyes and let yourself be part of the illusion, if you will, then it's so much more effective. So I think soundstage is a big part of that. Where if you're in a noisy environment with an H800, it doesn't do much for me. But if it's really, really quiet and you close your eyes and you really imagine yourself there in the music, then it suddenly becomes much, much wider. So it's as much basically thinking about, okay, how do I put myself in a good mood for enjoying music than just having
drugs.
a headphone.
Drugs is the answer.
Yeah. Okay. It was fast. Next topic.
Yeah. So when you want for some listening sessions, when you really want to decide, how good the sound quality is, it might be good to take some aspirin before.
Yes.
No, it's really true, because this makes your blood thinner, and so there's more oxygen in the ears. So listening is better. So we did that for some critical listening sessions at Sennheiser from time to time.
Interesting.
Cool.
Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anyone. So,
We've told a few people now.
Yeah. No, nobody will.
Yeah.
So it's just us, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay. So so it is, of course, perception and not perception. It's music, and as Jermo said, the brain is filling things.
Experience, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think just to finish this with the electrostatics. So just that thought came to my brain. Maybe it's the big surface of the drivers that is, moving the air, and it's accelerating not only the eardrums but parts of the skin or the bone or whatever as well. So
yeah, because it's more of a planar wavefront, so it's not just focusing energy into the canal like, say, an HD 600. I've heard that argument before, and I'd be really interested in testing that, actually.
Yeah, was it Constantine who mentioned something along those lines?
Yeah, I think that this idea is sort of a German idea.
Well, he's
Yeah,
not
but-
German.
He's
so
Austrian.
Constantine and
listen
I,
up.
we had some discussion, but we never talked about that. So it's
Great minds.
maybe we have, and he is in Vienna, so that is not Germany, that's Austria. So
There was a war over that, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So don't talk about that.
Yeah.
But some people like these headphones here as well, and the surface of the drivers is maybe something that you've seen them.
Mhm.
There are two woofers in, and so there's a lot of air moved as well, and the surface that is radiating it is quite large too. So it's maybe something that the metalheads love it. The audiophiles only if you love them, but okay. I think it's a great headphone for metalheads for sure.
Yeah, but what I find interesting about this train of thought of a large driver is that for planar magnetics, I rarely have that sort of connection. So, like my favorite example is LCD5, which is which sounds fine. It sounds good. There's not many faults with it, but it doesn't really move me when I listen to it. So I wouldn't use it for pleasure listening. It's when I listen to it, I think technically this is nice, but for me personally, it doesn't have the same quality as electrostatics have.
Well, but it's also not that large in terms of its moving area, right? Like if you compare, I guess
Not in
like,
comparison to
it's
like
like a
iPhone.
lambda, right? Like a square stack, sort of a similar size to that, maybe a little larger, but like not really as big as not as big as the HE1, not as big as any of the big Ophi or Hi-Fi Mans, those sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. I find it an interesting concept. I'd really love to see that tested.
Yeah.
My intuition, I will say my intuition goes the other way, which is that the other major trait of electrostatics, and this is different obviously to planars, is that they're very acoustically transparent. Like the membrane and the stators themselves emit sound much more readily than the magnet array of a planar.
That's true.
And I would also say that the drive is more uniform. So with planar magnetic headphones, you usually have these magnetic bars which drive the membrane, and it's obviously not plain over the entire surface. But there will be some areas where it's a bit stronger, and of course the layer on the diaphragm needs to correspond to that. And for electrostatics, it's nearly uniform. Of course, you have the holes in the stator, so where there is no, let's say, force injected or emitted. But overall, I think that the membrane can move more uniformly. And
it does, yeah. But you measure it the right way, you will find it. So you should not measure the modes of the stators. Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
One of the things I wanted to get just before we're cutting for time, obviously you guys have currently one product, the OE1, and I think that had kind of a mixed reception. And I was wondering, what is your thoughts about that now that it's kind of a mature product and you're looking back? Are there things that you think you would have done differently there, or that you think it's going to be more of the market will realize the merits in the long run?
I think when you expect something and your expectations were, okay, this is now a super HD 800 or for lower price, or something like a super HD 650 or something like that. And then you get the OE1s and they have this high amount of bass and this, and your own, and it's really true. So when you try different pinnae on a dummy head, you will see different frequency responses. Much more different than when you have a traditional headphone. then you're surprised. For some, it's a good surprise. For some, it's a bad surprise because oops, didn't expect that. But for me, so economically, I would say yes, would have been a good idea to do it differently and to do just an update on the 650s or something like that. But on the side where I say, okay, I want to make progress, and I want to, when I look at the mirror, so I want to say, hey, you didn't make a compromise just because to please someone's expectations. You want to give from your experience what you think, and I have good reasons for that, is the right thing. And yeah, so I have to follow my own style. And this is what I always try to. And this when you're in the company like Sennheiser had been, so I could do that. After a while, it was getting difficult. There's reasons why I left the company, and yeah.
Fair.
So, just to sort of, I guess, push a little bit on this, there are a number of folks who have heard the OE1, obviously Andrew, but also folks like Mark, Ryan, Sally, and a few other reviewers who I know who got it fairly early on, whose experience of the OE1 was that the timbre, the tone color formed by the mids and the treble, sounded to them to be quite, in many cases, harsh, right? And that is a criticism that you've historically heard of things based on the free field target, right? Like that's something, if you go all the way back to Gunther Thiel and stuff in the 80s, people are about free field. And my perception is, both by the response that we see in the in the OE1 and by what you said about it, is that it is aiming for something that is more free field-ish, right?
It's more free field-ish, yes, than diffuse field-ish, because when you go to a recording studio, so say it is there are standards, but the standards have some tolerances. So there's no real standard, but you have this live and dead and, in a way, studio thing. And when you go to a studio like that and just put a dummy head on the place where the mixer is, it is not that much a diffuse field, so it's more front oriented. So it's really the speakers. Of course, the first wave front need to come from the speakers, but everything else is this is the live end, and the dead end starts here somewhere already. So you don't have so many reflections from 90 degrees or 270 degrees. So where the sound comes from in the traditional headphone, you have something that is coming from the back, but the higher frequencies are dampened for that as well. So, of course, there are limits how much the high frequencies and low frequencies could deviate and damping and all this. This is all more or less defined, but I found that this, yes, frontal things are the more important. And yes, much higher in the frequency response. So the measurements are not completely done. We are going to different studios and doing measurements there. And when I have a good base where I can say, okay, now it has really the evidence, or is proven that all the studios that I've measured give this frequency response at that angle, and so on and so on and so on. Then, I will write some presentation. Maybe we will have a paper as well about that, but not this year. So I think we can't do it this year.
It wouldn't at all surprise me if the response, the BRIR, as to use Sean's terminology, I guess, generally the binaural room impulse response does match better with the OE1. But I guess my question here is, are you more committed to following matching what's in the studio than to making, like, would you consider making a consumer line product that was voiced in a way that was perhaps more preferable?
Have you ever been in a studio? I think
Unfortunately, yes.
So when it's late at night and you have the breakthrough with the sound and say, now we have it, that's it. So that situation when it really, everything comes together and sounds great. So I like that. And I like this. So in a good studio, there is great sound. I know there are some studios that have strange sound, but the professional studios, so, and I, yeah, here in
So,
Hanover.
like, let's say that we did do like a straight comparison test, right? Like you could even do this with BRIRs, right?
Yeah.
You could say, do people prefer this studio or this listening room, which is going to be much more live. It's going to have much more reflections from the side and back. In a scenario where people did actually prefer that, is that something that Grell would consider, again, not necessarily for all of your products, but having maybe a studio line and a consumer line?
Interestingly, so studio headphones are not like that. Studio headphones are more these.
But no, you know what I'm saying. Something that
Yeah. So, but I think that is a big misunderstanding as well, and that leads to this overrepresented treble, not only treble, but 4 or 5K range, because studio headphones are used as an acoustical lens to hear all the things that are bad in the recording. And in the beginning, people bought studio headphones and say, hey, I want to have something great. It's for the studio, so I will hear it like people are listening in the studio, and they don't know about the process, how music is produced, and what headphones are used for what in the studio, and that the speaker system is in the end, okay, there is a lot of things that are done with headphones, with car speaker systems as well, and so on to try how it sounds like, but the main system is the speaker system for mixing. And so studio speakers are good for studios for work, but they are not something where people can where customers say, hey, this is a benchmark for how a headphone should sound. Okay, but I got your message. I think, and again, so we have all learned our preferences. We are a very small company, and we need to make money to pay all this research and everything. Maybe I do something that meets expectations a little bit more. Yes, I can do that. Maybe I can do something where with just small modifications. One thing is the ear pad. The other things are so keeping the geometry as it is. And of course, I have something in my basement that works like that already. But this educating, or education is a bad word, but showing, okay, look, this is possible, or this is how it could sound.
It's like demonstrating.
So it could sound like that, and give it a chance. This is what I want to do.
I had a question about that, if I may. So with the OE1, so you mentioned that like when you put a different pinna in, you see quite a strong variation in the result. And so, given that this is a quite low acoustic impedance headphone, we would assume that this result is a ear proximity, potentially an ear proximity difference, and also just the effects of the HRTF, right? When reviewers like headphone reviewers like myself or Mark Ryan, report that we hear the treble frequencies more harshly. What I'm wondering is where you think if you think the error is, or the not error, but if the issue is the frequency response at our eardrums, given the nature of this sort of more frontal design, or is the issue in the psychoacoustic domain as far as not being able to interpret this this timbre effect as a directivity effect, something along those lines?
I think it's more this geometrical thing, so that when the sound is injected directly to the ear canal, so with traditional headphones you will have a treble response. That is always the same for all. Treble response at the eardrum, measured treble response for all listeners, and it could be something that is more or less than in natural hearing. But when you have the drivers in front, you hear it in a way. It could be more for you than it is than with traditional headphones. So you are surprised because it's more because of your geometry, and it is. Do you have some good speakers somewhere?
Yeah, in my living room.
Okay, so I get a lot of very positive comments from people listening mainly with speakers and now changing to OE1s and say, hey, it's great because it's. I have one guy wrote, I have $160,000 speakers, and the OE1 is the first headphone that is coming close to that. Great. And some other guys are discussing if they can use the OE1s for mixing in the studio. Good. Yes. I think they should stay with their speakers. But maybe you do this comparison with your loudspeakers and the OE1. So especially in the high frequency range, is there something that you can find that is similar and that is different with, for example, an HD650 or 660?
Yeah. Well, and that's why I'm curious if I imagine in that distinction, for the speaker folks who really are able to connect with it, I imagine that this is a psychoacoustic thing that, because we are so used to using headphones, it's I mean, as you said, it's the expectation, right? When you put on the sound helmet, you have an expectation of, some of us have an expectation of the sound helmet like sound, whereas a speaker person might not, and that's where this it's connecting better or resonating better for them.
So I think of course it's not only geometry, so the geometry is, but you have your equalizer for headphones in and not the equalizer for speakers, and so it's
it's almost like I need to trick my brain into imagining sort of frontal sound field. Okay.
So on that one, I know that I referenced Gunther Thiel a bit too much, but are you aware of his Gestalt model for sound, timbre, and localization?
I read a little bit. So he did a lot, but I'm not fully aware now. No.
Well, so the distilled version is that the timbre of sound doesn't massively change based on an object's position in space around us, right? Like if I turn my head while being next to a piano, the piano's timbre may change a small amount, but the frequency response changes by 10.
I know that. I know that.
But his point was, and this is why he argued against free field or any directional calibration, with headphones, because our brains cue not just off of the timbral cues, but also off of the movements of our head and whether sound goes with us. He argued there will never be a true out-of-head localization with a passive headphone. And I have seen that generally matched by a number of subsequent results. Like people out-of-head localize pretty well with actively tracked headphones. If you put something on top and change the HRTFs it's presenting based on where you are, and then it feels like there's an object in space making that sound. But with headphones, and this is what I've always found, that illusion shatters almost instantly unless my head is basically in a vice. Like sometimes
with
I'll get that
stereo
moment.
recordings.
Yes, well, no, even with binaural.
Oh, really?
That's the
Okay.
thing. With binaural, no, turn your head rapidly while listening to even a really good binaural recording, and your brain will just like screech out of "there's something in my room" to "there's something orbiting my head."
Right. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the question of, doesn't that raise a problem for basing timbre on a free field response?
I don't think so. So one
Really?
thing is what is, and Goethe Thaler did a lot of things, and a lot of things were right and good. But when, and this is right, you hear the piano exactly the same way when you turn your head around, things like that, because you know the room, you know the angle of your head in the room, and so on and so on. So all this is calculated out, so it will not have a different frequency response in this angle. You of course you measure a different frequency response,
But you don't perceive it.
yeah, but you don't perceive it because the equalizers are set in the right way. So now to headphones, yes, you will never have this, especially in front localization. I don't know if you know the recording by Günther Thaler, this dummy head where he comes in the room and so on and so on. A telephone is ringing, all great. So all that works, especially with the HD800, very well. But when he's going in front of you, he's in the head, and so no way to get him out there when he's in front of you. But when he's going to the right again, so he goes out. That only works with some head trackers when you really then you can get things out. There are some works by Blauert and some others as well. You have some sensors here that are connected with your hearing nerves, so that gives you very exact knowledge about not only this angle but these angles as well. So you know exactly where your head is, and so how you perceive, or the expected perception of sound from one direction, and that based on that you can find out where the noise is coming from. So I think our brain is doing a great stuff. So compared to, let's see when AI can do that. Okay, but again, back to headphone tunings and the right tuning. What you hear when you listening to a traditional headphone is you hear it with, in the end, when I did the tuning with my ears. So it sounds good for me. But now you put your ears in, and you don't, and it is something that is meant to come from the front. So it sounds, I tune it for drivers that I hear in a way that sounds good for sound that is meant to come from here. For me, it sounds good. For you, you expect normally something differently from the front, but you hear it pre-tuned for my ears. So you hear it in a way with my ears. Okay, and what that means, how big the differences are when you have a different pinner. So that is something everybody can try that. So take a hairdryer, put it somewhere, switch it on, and then just take your fingers here and press a little bit, just a little bit, nothing like that, just a little bit here on the pinner, and hear how dramatically the perception changes. That's really big differences. And so that shows you how important your own ear-related transfer function, or better head-related, but we can't do that.
This is the problem with in-ear headphones. It's always bypassed.
Really?
So, I mean, I agree completely, but to me, that seems like more of an affirmation of why the localization timbre model is important, right? Because the whole thing that we have, and this has been shown, right, when you put inserts into people's ears so it changes their HRTF, initially their perception of sound timbre and their localization is completely fucked. But then after time, your brain rebuilds sort of its library of expected incidence sounds. And then it gets back to normal. And then when you take them back out, it sounds bad again. But
this is one of the things that we all have our headphone equalizer. Putting headphones on, headphone equalizer switched on. And this is the thing. Burn in of headphones. Okay, there are some drivers that need burn in, especially drivers from loudspeakers where you have some glue or things like that. Yes, but the most headphones don't need to be burned in, so they don't change. So what all the parameters you can measure remain right from just built to 2 years later. Same. The only thing that is changing is the ear pads, because but everything else remains the same. But your perception is changing. You get used to the sound of the headphones, and so you build up a EQ for that headphone. And
so this is the idea then, is that the front biased or direction based sound field versus the diffuse field is a learned thing that's part of the expectation that would need to be retrained, I guess.
Yes. So he is thinking that we have, even though it's non-localized sound, we have an expectation that we apply to headphones sound,
as soon as you put on the sound helmet,
which is distinct from our expectation of other non-localized sound. Okay, now my question would be, why would we have that expectation of a headphone versus any other, just being in a room with sound coming from all incidences? Like, what in my brain differentiates two unlocalizable sound sources?
That is a good question. So some more research is necessary. Yeah, it is. I don't know. I have no answer on it, but it is something. Yeah.
All right, I'm not going to grill you for more than 30 minutes on this one. I appreciate you going into that.
I think that's okay, but there are so many. So when you try the OE1s and wear them for a while, for some days, and then go back to, say, a traditional headphone, then you think, oops, okay, it sounds like that. Strange. So it's the other way around. So when it's a headphone that you have used for a long time already beforehand, so when I change to my HE650s, so
marble.
No, those are not
no,
marble.
650. Sorry,
650s. Yeah. But no foam inside.
Man.
Oh, interesting.
So yes, 2007. So when I change back to them, I know them that well. There is no irritation. So there's another EQ switched on. That's the HE650 EQ, maybe. I don't know. Yep. And I've tuned them, so they should sound good for me.
But just so I understand this, the steel man of this perspective would be that the sound helmet of the headphone is the unnatural thing.
Yeah.
So whereas direction-based sound fields are the more natural ones, right? So it's like when we are putting on the headphone, that is itself like that's the weird bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, and I think
we can learn that, of course. So and Blaine, as you said, so when our ears are damaged somehow and damaged for a longer time, we can adapt to things like that. So men are made to adapt on this different frequency responses and so on, and that's okay. But I think the closer we are to, okay, there's a piano in front of me. I'm sitting in a room that I know, and it sounds like that. The closer we are to that situation in our perception, the better it is. So the less brain calculations need to be done, and so on.
Right. So I guess then the follow-up question for me there would be, why try and what's the I'm wondering what you think about the distinction between pursuing that with passive headphones versus pursuing that with active headphones, or something where you can do the spatial audio thing, not necessarily Atmos, but like, the snapshotting thing where it's like it does the, in front of you thing. Is there a merit in chasing that with passive headphones, or does it make more sense to go with active ones, I guess, is the question.
I think a mix of both, because with geometry, so when you can use your individual ear geometry, so this is something, you can do that just by how the headphone is made, where the transducers are placed, things like that. And the next thing is that you can use DSP things. I think head tracking is something that is very helpful, of course. And the next thing is, okay, the room that I'm in play a role for me as well. So to get that room somehow as well. So you're listening. It's a crazy situation. You have this room that is created when the recording is made, and you put that on your head, and you are in a room that sounds completely different, lead to that recording room. And but it's important that the room you're in is somehow interacts with you.
Right. So your model of the timbre is that we have, even with non-localized sound, we have expectations that the room we're in influences it, and that some element of our directional HRTF influences it, but also that the response that we prefer is going to be different than the actual response of a loudspeaker in our room.
Yes.
Interesting. I understand now better where you're coming from.
So you know that in the late 80s, University of Aachen, they did some things with loudspeakers where they tried to make them flat in a room, and it sounded really very unnatural. And they found, so a flat response is wrong. So the characteristic of the room is well known to the audience, and so the part of that need to be not equalized out, need to be in. So the only thing that you can do to make better room acoustics is to make it with passive absorbers and so on and so on. So when the room is good, great, but to equalize everything out is not good. Just a little bit of this very high resonances, bring that down, things like that, that's okay, but not too much. And I know that Neumann, the Neumann speaker system now is following that path in a way. So I know that the Neumann guys are, had a very strong connection to Aachen and that university. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. So the influence of the room when perceiving loudspeakers is one thing, but now you have headphones on, and research on that is, I don't know papers, nothing. Blaine, do you know?
I don't know of anything related to like where you are and headphones. I do know that we have, for broad strokes, found similar preferences across what must have been quite different testing environments. But I don't know of anything where you took the same subjects and put them in different spaces and found a more consistent, like found a result that we could use to test consistency of preferences or consistency of sound perception.
But is this idea of...
No, I think... So I guess the thing that I'm sort of... Sorry. Am I live?
Yeah, you're live. You blipped for a second. You're good.
I guess what I'm sort of chewing on here, though, is like Well, actually, there's two things. One is you can interpret the Aachen result as the room matters, right? But you can also interpret it a different way, which is maybe it's
Oh.
That's perfect. The best way to troll the audience.
Maybe
Yeah. So please go with the second one again. The second.
No. I've already said my piece. We'll leave it at that.
Okay. Yeah.
We don't get it.
So no, the other way though you can interpret it, and this is actually something that I've very briefly sort of poked at Sean with, because Sean also takes the sort of the I guess you'd call it the Floyd Toole stance, which is the direct sound should be flat, and then because speakers have narrowing directivity, that means because there's rising absorption as a function of it slopes down in room. But you can also take it as humans just prefer a downward sloping sound power, because the thing is we haven't actually tested whether someone would equally or more prefer an omnidirectional speaker with the same in situ response, right? We know that with directive speakers and with speakers with rising directivity, we like the flat on axis, and because we like the flat on axis, we like the downward sloping in room. But the question is, do we like the flat on axis because it yields the downward sloping in room? Do we like the downward sloping in room because it comes from the flat on axis, or neither, because it could indeed another factor entirely? We know that that's the result, but there are many ways that can actually be causally related.
So this is to say that this might not be the expectation of the room.
Exactly.
Okay. Cool. I hadn't thought of it like that.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Yeah.
I bother Sean with this on a semi-regular basis.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
We have a whole pile of additional questions. I don't know.
we do.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also have questions for Jermo.
Sorry,
I want to get into some of those.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all good. Griffin, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, sure. So this is again for Jermo. You're very clearly quite tuned into the online audiophile community based on some of the banger Reddit memes you've posted recently on Meme Monday. The one about oratory agreeing with you genuinely spoke to my soul. But so because you're dialed into the community, from your perspective, what's something the audiophile community tends to get wrong about headphone design, as someone who's obviously designed quite a few headphones as well?
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things, for some related to headphone design and some to the broader headphone business, I would say.
I would love to hear both, like whatever you have to say, truly.
Yeah, I guess one thing is with active headphones. I always cringe internally when people praise it, that a true wireless has a more or less smooth frequency response or is tuned really well, because in the end they all have a chip inside where you can EQ it as much as you want, and it's not really hard to tune it well then. So the challenge is really, in my mind, mostly to do it really passively, and the question is that even a valuable thing? Because we at Sennheiser, we really value that a lot, that we could practically tune all of our headphones purely passively, and the equalizer was mostly just there for some additional I don't know, EQ settings or something for the user. But again, if I see the wireless launch and people say, oh yeah, there are acoustic experts, they have a sort of flat sound, I think, oh yeah. I mean, they can
well, with that said, I mean, there is something to be said for knowing what good is, because if you look at like the range of TWS products that are out there, I mean, there's some wild stuff out there.
Still plenty of stinkers from the people who have access to equalization.
Like Nothing is a really good example where the first wireless was tuned like I don't know what, not really good, and then I think, how can you develop a headphone and not sort of have an idea of how it should sound, and that's again an interesting point into if, like, the neutral curve that we are all used to, if that is just a general thing that everybody should know. And then the second release was really, really good. So somebody learned to.
Was DMS is influence,
Somebody,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah, DMS went over there and helped him out with that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one thing that irks me a little bit. It's not a big thing, but generally the value behind a really cleanly tuned passive headphone and an active headphone is for me night and day. So what Dan Clark, for example, is doing is for me really remarkable. I mean, he's really measurement focused, where I take a little bit my personal. I think that's not the right direction. It's about experience for me and not about pleasing a measurement head, even though they're two interrelated probably. But still, what he does is really avant-garde in terms of passive tuning. So that's quite cool.
You mean like the modeling with the AMTS?
Yeah.
Cool.
But also his transducer production, I've heard, is quite state of the art.
It is. I've been there, and it's really great, Sam.
Yeah, so shout out to him and his team, of course. You never do it alone. And maybe like in general, related to the headphone industry or business, you always hear the calls for Sennheiser flagship or electrostatic or whatever, right? We are all dreaming of it. I have a little bit of a different perspective on it. And that is that every company should focus on where its strengths lies, primarily. And the Sennheiser strength is really like they are, in terms of audiophile companies, they're probably the largest in terms of audiophile business. And their strength is really the scalability of the business. So they have good connections to suppliers and can have really good industrial design expertise. So they can do like very functional chassis at a reasonable cost for them, but that works just so well for a lot of users. And also the acoustics is all like automated in terms of you put them in a magnet and a piece of plastic and so on. And at a material price, basically, you get a transducer out that sounds really, really good. So I would argue that something like a 550 with a bit of a bass shelf is, in terms of what you would want objectively, as we know it today, is sort of some of the best you could get, and at a very reasonable price for
100%.
For the manufacturer and also for the customer. So that is in my
Hey,
mind.
Jermo, you're working for Grell now?
Yeah, so I get on the bad side. No.
So actually, I had a question on that. I mean, so like HD 800 versus the 550 and sort of the high end versus low end, right? From what Sennheiser did, and you guys were obviously involved in both of those things. But the people always ask, why can't they just make an HD 900? The community wants this, right? Mm-hmm. But whenever I see that, and I'm curious what you think about this, but whenever I see that, I always think to myself, like, what do people think they want when they are asking for? Do they just want a more expensive HD 800? Like,
exactly.
As far as like what it is acoustically, what is good here? What is that but better? It's like it's really hard to nail that down.
Yeah.
And maybe it's something Grell can look at. Do a high end headphone at some point.
Yeah.
But, so just very short. So Grell, the idea is to make great headphones for affordable price. So, but what is affordable? So when the material cost is close to, or the cost you buy it is close to what the price you sell it for, then it's makes economically no sense. So when we do something with better drivers and so on, price will go up as well. And so let's see what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but actually going onto that, that's also a very interesting point where like 2 weeks ago, there was a Reddit thread where somebody was unveiling, so to speak, like the bomb of a DIY headphone assembler. So he looked up like the chassis that a person was using and the transducers the person was using, and he added it all up, and it came out that it was like $200 worth of parts for a headphone that he sold for $800, something to that degree. And people were clowning on him and ganging up on him that he was sort of evil, more or less. I'm exaggerating, but
sure.
And to me, it's going like in the completely wrong direction. So for a number of reasons. First, that is just item cost, and if you add on the assembly and the risk and and cost of opportunity. And if you're just a private person actually buying all that stuff, I think it's not bad to have some payout in the end and not be completely in the red. And then just generally speaking as a business, you're on a good path if you're really profitable. I mean, that's the end of it. So as Axel just said, if you're really close in your manufacturing cost to the cost you sell, then that means the world doesn't value what you do, or you're really inefficient. There's those two options. Hopefully you're not really inefficient, but generally speaking, if you're able to manufacture something that people value at a much higher price and nobody else can do it, then you do something really good for the world in a sense, and you're bound to be rewarded for that. But also, of course, hopefully you use the profits to further than the technology and so on.
Yeah.
But people should keep that in mind. And I felt in that moment it was really unfair to gang up on that DIY person, because he was. I felt he was just following his hobby and trying to make a dime on the side or something. And it was not at all a scam or anything like that. I mean, that is just a very, very reasonable, let's say, relation between manufacturing cost and the price tag you see in the end. Because in the normal situation, you also have a dealer in between who also takes his share.
And the distributor.
Yeah, exactly. So in the end,
and you have to pay the marketing cost.
Yep.
And the overhead and the
logistics,
large firms.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Quality,
So
all that stuff. So yes, it's a lot of logistics. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of cost going in, and there's no shame in like a 25% relation between the manufacturing cost and the sales price. That's
this always felt like part
the
part
BOM
of,
cost specifically.
Oh yeah.
Because and actually, I always tell people to shoot above 4-to-1 MSRP to BOM, because overheads, manufacturing, they're big. But so you're absolutely bang on there, but I want to push back just a little bit. If he's buying all of those parts off the shelf, there's only so much value that this guy can actually be adding in his assembly. So like someone who makes something, he was making a product that cost him $100 less, but it involved more of his own design parts, so he would have more control over the acoustics, so he could be doing something that was more distinct. I would feel like it would be more likely he would be bringing strong value. Whereas if he's buying all of these parts off of, AliExpress or whatever, I do question how much he's actually bringing in terms of his value contribution for the end user.
Yeah.
Well, it probably depends on how good it is.
No,
Well,
I think
yes.
it's really an engineer's argument. Or a scientist's argument, because in the end, value is entirely in the mind of the consumer. And
of course.
Like fashion is the best example, where like virtually every t-shirt is not worth a lot, and yet suddenly you print Nike on it and people are happy to pay a lot of money on it for it. So I think it's very hard to make these sort of judgments. My advice would be actually for people to take shortcuts and think about what is really, really valuable to people. And how can you just take a shortcut which people maybe have not seen yet, and go there that way? And you could argue, even if you just take off the shelf like components, if you combine them in a smarter way than everybody else and happen to become much more efficient than others, and if others can't copy it, then you're in a good position and you've done something good for the world in a sense, because now the world has a more efficient way of getting to that means.
Oh, absolutely.
Like an example again is tuning, and let's say you take what people really like is obviously a flat tuning, or something that we all perceive as flat more or less, and then what people also like is some novel transducer technology. So like ribbons, people seem to find it exotic, and let's say you just bang some sort of ribbons into a chassis and you try it out, and the response is completely fucked up, and you think, okay, I can't sell it, or people wouldn't be happy for it if you gave it to them for $200, and now you put an active chip in there and you just EQ it electronically, and maybe you have to charge it every 100 hours or something because it's a special amplifier, and suddenly people are willing to pay $800 for it because it's now a fantastically tuned-driven headphone. And maybe you have $20 extra BOM cost of an off-the-shelf component. But in the end, you've maybe taken, in terms of effort, a shortcut compared to somebody who would spend hours and hours and hours of doing passive tuning, and maybe it doesn't even arrive at something that is nice. So it's a stupid example, but but in a sense, I think that is a recipe for more or less long-term success, that you really reflect on what is valuable to customers and think about, okay, how can I do it better than others before in a more efficient way.
So I have to restore my honor because I actually studied economics, not engineering. But I do want to say there is one problem with the, shall we say, the market validation model of utility. And that, of course, is information. And in audio, people's knowledge of what they are getting is very poor.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it? That's the question. I think what is really interesting is that it's, in a sense, a luxury market, in the sense that people associate with higher price, higher performance. I mean, that's very normal. But there's, I think it's to a much different degree than you have it in all other industries. So I don't know, for cars or something, you expect something to beyond a certain price point. It's just luxury or exclusive limited edition for rich people, more or less. But for audio, people really expect more or less a linear increase of quality, which may or may not be the case. So it is a really, really special case where the normal value equation in the head doesn't make much sense anymore for some customers.
I think part of that has to be that whatever sense people have of being able to get special knowledge of, cost of all this stuff, and that's what generates, what vitriol for, like this person, it's like, oh, this is a luxury good because a headphone is in most cases an accessory device, right? It's a thing that you have to listen to the thing. The idea that something could cost $800 is extreme for I would say for the norm, right? And so if you have some sort of special knowledge about like, oh, this is what the BOM is, it's like that in and of itself is the thing that is it's putting that weird psychology in people's heads, right? And then if you have a conversation with them about it and say like, look, actually, like, this is like exactly what you just said. This is how a business needs to profit, for example, right? Like there's nothing wrong with this. Then they go, okay, wait, no, that actually kind of makes sense.
Well, and there's two sides to approach it from. Most people think, imagine that I can make an HD800 for $1, right? I have just a magic HD800 pouch that just pulls them out if I put a dollar bill in.
Maybe
people would say, oh, well, that costs you $1. You should sell it for $10. But if I sold it for $200 or $300, that would still be the best thing on the market for $200 or $300, right? It would make the market a much better place for consumers.
Yeah, but the question is, will you really sell it? Will you sell a lot of them? So the funny thing is, the price in the beginning when we started to sell the HD800s was $999 or $989, $98, and so then cost went up, and I had to increase the price. So, and the funny thing is that the amount of
Sales
HD800s sold was not going down, but was going up. Yeah. So it's crazy, but that is the real world. So the value that was seen for these headphones increased with the price, and I think that was an increase from $999 to $1,399. I think that was okay. So because when you compare it with all these other headphones around at that time, that was the right price for it. Mm-hmm. And seen from the cost situation, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about HD800 pricing, because I think it's probably still, in terms of like high-end headphones, like the most correctly priced. I think in terms of its like normal retail price, like not as far as like my own personal value of it, but like just how well it sells. Like it's a very well-selling high-end headphone. Probably, I don't actually have the sales data on this. I'm just kind of going on like the best-selling page on headphones.com, but I'm pretty sure it's our best-selling flagship headphone. And I would assume it's by a pretty significant margin because it's also one of the first that really had like purchase at that price. And I think it's just older than a lot of the other ones as well. So there's been more time.
And I think we come back basically to this topic where what people expect from an HD900, you know, that first, I personally wouldn't like to spend 4,000 euros for a headphone. That's just
many people want to. Many people want to spend.
I take my money.
but still, for me personally, the value equation sort of goes out of the window at a certain point. Maybe I would pay that region for like an old Orpheus or something, but not for something that doesn't go to that quality level, and that is quite extreme. What the HD800 also does really good compared to other high-end headphones, I think it is very differentiated in the sense that everybody knows what it does really, really well, and it's still sort of the king of soundstage, you could say, and also does detail really well for headphones. And I think like this differentiation is also something that is so important for a product. So that would be also something that everybody wants, like this HD600 Plus also, but in the end, what is really successful is something that is really different. And the question is something that is just an HD600 plus 3dB more bass really different? Maybe yes, maybe no. But the HD800 is successful not because it's a better HD600, but because it's its own thing. And I think it would be even successful at like 2,500 euros or something, because it still does its thing really well. Probably not as much as it is right now, but still, it's.
And that's sort of the question: is like, would a HD 900 or HD 850 or something like that be more soundstage, more detail, and would that even be preferable? You know, like who knows?
Yeah. Absolutely. And beyond that, also basically how business works is like the HD800. I mean, Axel, you know it better than me, but I think it was in development for something like 8 years, and probably had some like some low and high points over the time. But like the cost of development at a large firm, it is in that regard, maybe you have a team of 10 people or something. So you need a project manager, you may need a product manager, an acoustic engineer, you may need 1 or 2 mechanical engineers, you may need somebody
manager, quality manager,
then people for then for the transducer you need an acoustics and mechanical and quality guys. So it adds up really fast, and each of these people costs the business at least 100K a year. If you're in cheap Germany, that is, and if you're in the US, it's probably a bit more. And they don't just take a year for an HD800, but quite a bit of time. And then you get to like a project one time of 3 or 4 years, and costs are mounting, and also the time you need to return the profit. And at the same time, if you have such a high stakes or high cost product, then you also want to be really, really sure that it actually hits and that it actually works. So that was, I think, the crazy thing with the HD800, that there was so much risk associated with it, and there was no reason to believe that a 1,000 euro headphone could work back in the day, and magically it did. But it could have been financially a complete catastrophe, and luckily it wasn't. But still, at some point, you have top management involved, and they ask you, how sure are you that this really works? Latest after year 3, when they want to have turnover, hopefully this year still. And so basically the more costly it becomes, the less likely it is that you get something really new and revolutionary. And that is something special about the Sennheiser from 20 years ago, where they had crazy stuff like the HD800, or like there was also on the microphone side, there was a similar project, the D9000 system. So it was like the first digital microphone which really transmitted 24-bit and 48K, or I think 96, I don't know.
Oh, the MKH 800.
Yeah.
So the microphone.
So there were really a lot of crazy moonshots, which had like 5 years plus project duration, which had no chance at all in normal cooperation to survive. and yet somehow for some reason they survived at Sennheiser and became successful. But that is not how it has to be. And if you're so crazy, then also some things don't work out. Like one of the first wireless products at Sennheiser. I think it was launched in 2008 or 9, and it was crazy expensive for its time, and you needed a dongle and so on. So it just wasn't good for the market, and it was a huge failure. But people still say they're very proud that Sennheiser launched the first wireless like 10 years ahead of Apple, more or less. But you can be on the right track and still be too early or don't have the EU proposition.
Yeah, but some things were good. So Sennheiser were the first who made headphones with aptX, by the way. So not with SSBC, but aptX, and that. So when I listened to aptX the first time, and that was long time before Bluetooth aptX, so I said, okay, this is the best predictive and fast codec that I know. So we wanted to use it in the beginning for wireless microphones, and it was really great. And yeah, and that was the breakthrough for Bluetooth headphones. With aptX, you can say, okay, it's okay. The sound, it's not audiophile quality, but hey, it's okay.
It's fine. It's fine. we were having this debate on a stream recently.
Yeah, but compare it with SBC.
Oh, of course, it's well. The issue that we sort of rail against is the idea when people put like lossless on the box, and that's the qualifier for sound quality. Never mind the fact that the frequency response is horrible, where, so we think, well, like at the very least, you have a whole bunch of other qualifiers and disqualifiers that you should go through first before caring about lossless, something like that. And in that respect, something like aptX is totally fine, so.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Jermo, and I know that you weren't in charge of this, but if the higher ups at Sennheiser wanted easy money, why don't they just release like the HE.5? Like if they made a $5,000 electrostat, they would basically print money with it if they said it was derived from the HE1.
Yeah, and that goes directly to the point with what is the strength of the film. And as I said, it's really this high number game, and the problem with, or the challenge that Sennheiser has, is that internally the processes, the way we work, is really set up for this. Okay, we want to build 100,000 units, more or less. And once you start going into HE1 territory, then suddenly the game is not 100,000, but you only want to sell a few hundred, maybe, hopefully more. But like really in this luxury territory, it's not much more. And yet you still have the same people that still hold the same quality standards, or even higher, because it's now very luxury, so it needs to have higher quality, basically requirements. And that is, in my opinion, not the right approach for such a product. So if you are really doing really luxury stuff, then it's sort of building prototypes and a series of one, more or less. And products will be different from one another. But that's not too bad, because how many people have the chance to compare an HE1 with another HE1? It's sort of limited. And as long as you can assure that the experience is quite good for the customer, then you're still good to go. But if you have to have a test series of 1,000 products, and you break 1,000 products to make sure that you have like a very low chance of product failure, then the entire project becomes super economically unviable. Just as a example for I don't know, setting up an acoustic process, for instance, and making sure that the transducer is always exactly the same, and you have a plus minus 1 dB tolerance or something. That's super nice to have, and it's very valuable if you go really into mass production, but it really hinders you once you go into really low unit production. Axel, you maybe also have an opinion on that?
Yeah, to follow that question, you're completely right, but the transducers of the HE1 are one of the most expensive things in the whole thing. and to build based on these transducers of a headphone for 5,000 is not possible. So you.
Oh, no. To be clear, I wasn't suggesting using the vapor deposited platinum, but what I'm saying is if you made any electrostatic design
inspired by,
or just marketed
gave
it
some more
as
design
related.
language,
Yeah.
you would mint money basically. It could even it wouldn't even need to have a metallized coating. Like you could use like a carbon coated mylar sheet or whatever, and people would definitely buy that in droves.
It could be
they
a
would
Grell
fall
audio
over
product.
themselves to buy it.
I actually was going to ask if Grell is ever going to consider doing an E-set, because it sounds like you consider them to still be the best.
Yeah, let's see. Maybe
a $300 E-stat where the Energizer is like in the head.
No, that would be the mistake, right? Same as in a $300 H800, people wouldn't buy it precisely because it's too cheap.
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, as sad as it is.
Yeah.
I think the HD800, if it was $300, would pretty much just nuke the rest of the $300 market. Actually,
Yeah,
I
mean,
don't
we
know.
saw on Reddit people getting that deal for from Canada for the $400 HD800.
But that's also
that's
part of the
because-
expectation.
that's because of the discount.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I know.
If you made something this good at $300, I think it just, in the same way that like the HD6 XX kind of made everything irrelevant at $200, I think that this would do the same thing. So like there is a factor of just straight up quality. Like the market isn't completely blind to the truth, just mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's see what we do next and how things develop. So in the current situation, tariffs are something that are a little bit. I don't know exactly what's going on today or tomorrow. So let's see. So most of the headphones on the planet are produced in China, so that's really bad. And okay, some headphones are produced in the US. Great, Dan Clark, cool, but
Odyssey, some of the Odysseys.
But of course, the material they are using, a lot of that is coming from China as well, for sure. Especially magnets and all that stuff, and so I don't know what will happen in the market. So in the future, but building electrostatic headphones would be something very nice. So I think, but nothing that could be done in half a year or something like that. So it's all these processes need to be set up and things like that. And yeah, I think dynamic drivers have a good ratio between, quality, robustness, sound quality, of course, as well. So a good dynamic driver. I've always been a big fan of dynamic drivers for in-ears as well. So, yeah. But electrostatics is something differently. But for in-ears, I think it's not a good idea.
Right.
Yeah, no.
It's reasonable. Yeah.
Oh man,
so
I forgot that was a thing now.
What was that brand that
ESTs.
did that?
The Strax did some in-ears.
Stax
with,
did do in-ears, yeah.
Sure did as well, actually.
They did,
for some
yeah.
reason.
Yeah, they did the KC
But now
series.
Sunny and Axel has an electric tweeter. I remember because it has this giant transformer that you have to use to step up the drive voltage.
Yeah, but when you have dynamic drivers that work up to 51 kilohertz minus 3 dB point, do you need a second driver or third or 12 or whatever? I don't know.
Yeah.
Marketing.
Yeah, truly.
12 is better than 1, yes, but not in acoustics. So where you have all these crossover frequencies.
Well, and also with IEMs, they're, unless it's a really novel design, it's a occluded system anyway. So you wouldn't get any other potential benefits of,
Well, the one honest piece of marketing that I've heard about multi-driver designs that wasn't just, you can tune the crossover, because you could do that with a single driver, just with an electrical filter network. But some people are on the, balanced armatures distort a lot. So if you have a lot of like third order distortion products, that's a pretty nasty intermodulation product. So if we split up the frequencies a lot, you get less intermodulation products from each driver. But that's just a case for using dynamic drivers again.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay, I think it is more or less a historical thing that Knowles built these things for hearing aids, and then Mead took these and made this etymologic research things out of them, and because they were small and so on, and no small dynamic drivers were available that time. Okay, I think that's the reason why we have all this balance and it's used today.
Yeah. This does get to what we were talking about before. It gets to one of the questions that we have, which is, are you able to share anything about what the next Grell Audio project might be?
Yeah, it's as always. We are working on things. Let's see.
Okay.
So it's difficult to announce something.
Of
We
course.
are happy that we have this one and that is out, and that production is stable. We have a supplier that is working first. So to get the tolerances that we require to keep this is not, very simple. So, but we achieved it, and so that's good. And so next things will be announced when they're ready.
When they're ready. Fair.
Yeah.
Okay, but this is just going to make me keep lobbying for an OAE1 retune.
Yeah. Okay, so I will create something for you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, but I think it's so I had no hand in the development of the OA1, but it's still what I think is admirable about the product is that it has a number of generally courageous decisions. So first, trying to revive Freefield, which is of course contentious whether that works, but the ambition is there. Then the amount of bass, which is up for discussion, but I'm not sure whether the current idea that we have is, it's very undifferentiated in the target curves, right? It's the same for every headphone. So that is already where it's, in my opinion, falls a little bit apart. And then, of course, the front-facing drivers, which is also something where, something which is extremely new, especially in that regard. So it's literally 50 degrees or something, which is...
it's very steep compared to like the 5 degrees you often see in angled driver designs.
Well,
This is why I'm stumping so hard for a retune, because I want to see how this very open design, the front drivers, does if you don't have the free field term, right? If you just eliminate that and make it more tuned closer to like an HD 600 and HD 800, I would be really interested to see how the market received it.
Well, the other side of this, though, I just had to note. I keep mentioning this. When at Munich High End last year, when you guys were kind of like debuting the OAE1, there was one of the people who was there, and I can't remember his name, so I apologize, but he kept telling me it was the best sound that he had ever heard in a headphone. And he wasn't. He was not unfamiliar. He wasn't not trained. Or he wasn't like just a speaker guy. It was somebody who was listening to all the other different headphones there. And I have to believe that a key part of that was the front bias free field concept. So to me, it's like I do agree with Blaine that I would love to also experience this in a way that is maybe a bit more congruent with the typical sort of sound helmet expectation that the people buying headphones and wearing headphones are familiar with. But I think there is also something to be said about what you guys, what you've just said, Jermo, as well, is that there is a courage to doing this, and like yes, there's a novelty behind it, right? But it's something that you don't know how the market's going to react until you try it.
Well, that's sort of my concern, is that they have such interesting ideas that I want them to be really successful so that they can keep pursuing them. So I'd kind of like them to try something that I'm pretty goddamn sure they'll sell like 20,000 of easily.
Yeah.
Like, are you coming to Munich this year?
I am.
Sadly, no.
I will. Yeah.
I think the next time we see each other will be in Helsinki.
Okay. Yeah. So, by the way, for those who are close to Munich, there is the high-end show this year. Again,
Last year for it.
last time in Munich. Next year it will be in Vienna, and we will be there again, but not in Hall 1 where the World of Headphones takes place, but in front of it. So
Oh,
we are
right.
coming with our Grell mobile. So there's this car with 4 seats in, so we can close all the doors and everything. Then there's no disturbing noise inside. And so in a hall, you always have a noise floor. Hey, and
There you go.
That was good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's legitimately a very good idea.
You should call this setup the Holy Grail.
okay, we call it now Grell Sound Mobile. Okay. So
I think that's better than
sound
going with the English language pun.
Well, it's Axel and the Holy Grail.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So everybody who's coming to the show is invited, of course, and yeah. So
Yeah. So I will be there. Cameron will be there as well. So we'll definitely check out that the Grell mobile.
yeah. And if you like, we can continue our discussion there. We have a little stage there where we give presentations,
cool.
and we can have spontaneous discussions for the public. So let's say.
Love it. Blaine, Griffin, do you have any more questions for either of these guys?
Blaine had a question that he wrote down that I actually really want asked. The one about the HD800, Blaine.
Oh, yes.
I love that
So,
question. I would like to know.
And I didn't just ask this about the HD800. This was sort of intended to be both to Jermo and Axel for different projects. But for the headphone of yours that had the most, I would say, unconditionally positive reception, like the ones that are undoubtedly market hits. So that'd be like the 505, the 550, and the HD 580/600 and 800. Wait, which one was it, Griffin? Was it the one about how they envisioned it, or what would you change? Oh, okay. So, like, did it end up the way you were expecting? Like, were those products received the way you were expecting them to?
So I think so with the 580s, 600s, 650s, that develops, slowly, not slowly, but it develops and quantities were going up and it builds up its own market in a way. So that was something organic growth. And HD800, that was really unexpected. So we wanted to make a headphone, a good one and a great one, but the quantities in the first year was unexpected. Never expected that, and never expected that the service at headfi.org would crash when we launch a headphone.
Hell yeah.
It was a powerful launch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, really, what's there to compete with it when it came out?
So that was really great. So yeah, unexpected, but you have from time to time you have these moments of success, and it's good, it's great. Sometimes it takes a while that products go to the market. For example, a Pro headphone HD280s, so where quantities were quite low in the beginning, so lower than expected. But then I think now more than 2 million have been sold over the years. So it's And in the beginning it was just okay, should we stop the project? It's not selling well. But the Pro market, it's a little bit different. There, it takes a while till something is a standard. So when you offer a microphone to a singer and say, hey, this is a new great whatever headphone, he said, okay, it looks great, sounds great, but give me as SM58. So yeah, this is
really tragic that that's the one they ask for, to be honest.
It could be worse. It could be worse.
Yeah.
It could be an SM7.
As an addendum to that, something that I feel like was how I unpacked the question was not only how did the headphone turn out after the release and how was it received, but did you find that the kind of narrative around it, or like the common reception of certain things about it being special, was different than what you initially maybe thought in either of your cases with any headphone you've designed? Like, did you feel something in particular about the headphone was special, and then maybe people didn't pick up on that, or the inverse of, something you never even thought of was considered very special? Or is it typically been like, no, they're hearing what I'm going for here?
Yeah, I guess I can just start with the first part of the question. So with the i900, I was actually quite nervous. I mean, you know that in-ears have high variance between people, but that is a product, of course, where we wanted to go for the best that is possible. And we were really refining that treble signature really more or less to the last day, and we had something like 50 iterations of it. So it was
I know
really,
you guys were using like resonators and damping and all sorts of stuff.
Absorbers.
Yeah,
Don't call them resonators.
Right. And we were always trying to get this part of the treble like 1 dB lower and so on. And we are sort of sweating and looking each other in the eyes. Is it now good enough? And if you're listening all the time for treble, then at some point you get hypersensitive to it and don't really have a blind view on it anymore, how normal people would listen to it. And then the launch happened, and overall it was well received. Of course, people had hoped for an electrostatic headphone, but it was just an in-ear. And then I go to a local hi-fi dealer, and the first thing the dealer tells me, well, do we have another version which has more treble? I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But no, but in the end, I'm actually really happy about the exercise, because the end result is sounding, in my opinion, really, really good. So it is not really adhering to target curves, but still I think it's a very enjoyable headphone. So objectively neutral versus just enjoyable tuning.
Sure.
And we actually had some sort of shootout after the release where everybody had a i900 and then different equalizers, and some would be equalized to be near Harmonish. We don't really like pure Harmon for in-ears. It's just too aggressive. Mm-hmm. And then like 70% of the group said, yeah, like this more neutral tuning is quite good. And then one of our most senior listeners said, well, now it sounds like a cheap Bluetooth speaker. And he thought like that the original tuning is really reflecting what his experience with the high-end speaker is. And then the more flat it gets, the less he really gets out of the product or what it's meant to be. So that's it was for me personally like a learning experience that again where flat versus really preference or enjoyment go into different directions. Mm-hmm. And what sort of surprised me with the i600, which was supposed to have like 90% the sound quality at half the price, where I thought, okay, this should be a banger. And then on top of it, the material it was used for, it was some sort of amorphous metal. Mm-hmm. So super, super high tech, something that is literally something that people don't use because it's just too crazy expensive and hard to work with. So it's harder than most really high strength steels. And because I have a bit of a mechanical engineering background, I found it just really, really cool, this material science aspect of it. And people just didn't get how special that material is. So I think almost nobody else would use it, but just because it's so crazy expensive. And I think we did a bad job of explaining how special it is. And I mean, it is very in-depth, and you have to be a bit of a material science nerd to get what is crazy about it. So normally, if you have a normal metal, then it's all like a crystalline structure. And that, of course, makes it malleable, and you can just bend a piece of metal sheet. But it also is a source of weakness in the sense that rust can get in between the crystals, and there are impurities in there and so on. And with metallic glass, it's sort of shock frozen from the liquid to just stay in this amorphous substance. And so that it works, it needs to be super, super pure. but then it can never rust basically, and it is extremely hard, much harder than any crystalline structure. So it's super nice and high end and science fiction basically. And people didn't talk about it at all.
So what we're learning here is that engineers are not good at marketing.
Yes,
Shocking. I am shocked by this information.
Yeah,
that's really cool. I knew it. What it felt cool. It looked cool, but I had no idea that there was this additional material science story behind it.
Yeah, and if you ping them together, then it even sounds a little bit like glass and not like metal.
Jermo, you still have to prove that you can put it on a I don't know, on a metal plate and hit it with a hammer, and then
you have to drive over it with a Jeep.
And then there's a dent in the metal plate.
And the hammer broke.
You still have to prove that.
But actually, we should do that.
That would actually have been a great marketing ad.
Yeah.
We are no longer Sennheiser.
Yeah, I was going to say,
true.
Axel, make sure
But
to
it's
send the
fun.
invoice to Sennheiser's marketing department after the stream.
They could have like a Apple AirPods Pro 2 here, and then the IE600 here, and hit them both with a hammer.
Okay, now Andrew needs to bill Sennheiser as well, because that is also a good idea.
I use the hammer only when I do marketing for heavies.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
Right.
The metal hammer, you know.
I did want to ask you guys about the HD820 if we have time. And
we have to close the stream. Sorry. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Well, it's sort of a continuation of the question that you've been asked. You know.
Okay, come on. So HD820, why does it sound how it sounds?
Yeah, basically, and the expectations behind it.
Yeah. So it was meant to sound more like an HD 800. And as Jermo said, there's a big team behind it, and you can't always choose members of the teams.
Mm-hmm.
So and sometimes you need to finish a project because of money reasons, and you have to sell what you get. And so I personally was not in charge for the tuning of it, and I was not really happy with the product. But okay, so I was responsible to sell it, and I sold it. And this is what is happening in the companies sometimes. So I know the acoustical engineer, she did what she can do with the rest of the team, but there were some mechanical things that were not as perfect as they should be. The sound is as it is. It is. I know really headphones that in the price range that are sounding worse, really worse than the HD820s. Yes, I know. I think you know what I mean. And
and even much more expensive.
Yeah.
And I think it's there could be some improvements to make it sound like it should sound, but okay, now it is like it is.
And honestly, I would add two thoughts, and that one is the positioning. So I think that it was much more expensive than the H800S may have been a mistake, because first, like, open headphones always sound better, so they are worth more, even though they may be more expensive and hard to build. And that's just the world we live in. And I think if the reception would have been much better if it were at like $1,400 or something, then people would have said, yeah, well, it's not an H800S, but of course it also doesn't cost as much. So it's sort of okay. And then the other reason is like similar with the OE1 in the sense is that some people really love it. So like our quality engineer that we had, or that I worked with, until I quit Sennheiser, was really the biggest HD820 fan, and he understood why an HD800 is cool, but he really loves that it just had a lot of punch and bass, and that is sort of what he wanted to get out of it. Of course, the product is, in a sense, I think it's a compromise solution, in the sense that for closed headphone, some things you want are very reliable sealing, for instance. And then, of course, a huge ear cup is not always the best choice, or depends, of course, how you implement it or how much caliper pressure you have. that it may also be nice. And if you are then working on an HD800 platform, which basically lives on having very low caliper pressure and it's sort of just floating on your head, that's maybe not the ideal starting point to build a closed headphone. And I think the idea was, again, more sort of ambitious in terms of feature set, where we say, oh, wow, we can build a closed HD800, and not something where people screamed at you and you build something for customer demands, you know? So it's maybe, again, building something that will be cool versus something that people ask for.
So I wanted to, that's kind of what I wanted to press on with this. You mentioned earlier that like the HD800 was a bit of this sort of moonshot concept for Sennheiser, and they were willing to do some of these sort of crazy things. But I imagine there's sort of a different set of constraints when you're making something like like either of these two headphones, where now you have a much more specific design goal that is along the lines of like make something like an HD800 just close back versus just to make an amazing sounding close back, you know, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And so that I wonder how much of that sort of calculus affected what was possible to be done with this platform.
It was more this market-driven thing, mainly from the Asian markets, where sales front says, okay, we need something like the Sony, I forgot the name of it.
V1R.
Yeah. And
or was it the R9?
No.
Z1R.
Yeah. And we need something similar, and you have to do something. And how can we achieve that in a fast way? Okay, this way.
Got it.
Makes sense.
Actually, the comparison to Z1R actually makes it make a lot more sense to me, actually, because I feel like they're quite similar products in terms of what they offer. Like the comfort is really good. They're quite large, but not unergonomic. Yeah, I never really thought.
Price point.
Yeah. Obviously, yeah.
I know.
Makes sense.
And that's so strange because, of course, if you're developing the headphone, then it makes perfect sense for you to price the headphone similar to the Z1R. But for external people, then it is so strange that it's more expensive than an HD800. So
yeah,
just the point of perspective makes all the difference sometimes.
Yeah. I want to end on a lighter note, maybe, for either of you guys, if you could, and feel free to say no, but if you could, what would you say is your favorite headphone that you guys haven't had any involvement in whatsoever?
Oh, I can immediately start. It's an old Orpheus. It's
the old Orpheus. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. So for me, it does something magical, and it doesn't have a lot of bass, for instance. I don't even know if the frequency response looks that good, or if it's maybe a bit heavy in the upper mids. I don't know, but it's really the headphone where I get an emotional experience the most. I think there's really an unparalleled clarity with it. So more than with any other headphone, even like the Stax ones, which are sometimes a bit bass light and a bit treble heavy, but still it feels just much more organic. It's and also the story behind is really, really inspiring, where they also just, as I've heard, that they've had long, so first it was just build the best and price an object, but then that the engineers behind really went onto that journey, and they tried out a lot of stuff, and that is the way you get somewhere really good. In the sense that sometimes your second attempt is already really good, and you think, okay, let's just roll with it and it will be fine. But they really did a lot of trials in the sense of which thickness is the best, how many holes are the best, which materials are the best, and trying out all that stuff is so much effort. It takes time, takes really passion in the end, and I think it paid off big time, because in my mind it has never been so fast. It's
it just sort of struck me that like we live in an era now where I imagine that would be more challenging to do, because we have these sort of Halo products that exist, right? Whereas back then that nothing like that would have existed that I can think of anyway.
Yeah, I mean the AKG K1000 was sort of the
closest, yeah.
the thing that started the process.
Well, didn't also Bayer have a ESTAT in the 80s? Like
they had something, and Sennheiser had something before as well, the unipolar. So that was with electret films. So there was some history, and then AKG has something with a two-way, so where you have a tweeter, electrostatic tweeter inside, things like that. But the HE90, the Orpheus, were something that was a game changer. So I started when that thing was just ready and started to be produced. At that time, I started to work for Sennheiser, and I was involved in. Okay, it was difficult to produce it. We had some problems, and I was involved in learning and helping to solve them. But the engineers behind it made a fantastic job. So yeah. And I've learned a lot. And of course, Jermo, I agree. So for me, it influenced me when I did the HD 580s a lot. But I never liked the bass response, which was not existent. So it was. So when you look at the frequency response curve, it's going like that. It's really going really down from 1 kA down to 100 already down, and then you hear very clearly the overtones of drums and all that, all good. So you can generate the fundamental tones in your brain. That works. But I like to hear the real bass, and so when we started to make the HE1, I said, okay, what have an electrostatic, but with balls.
I mean, I think you succeeded.
Yeah.
And so I think we made it, and so for me, I would say Orpheus and K1000. So that were for me very inspiring headphones. And also the K1000 has even less space. But okay, so
do you guys have preferred music genres that you guys do you feel you have to listen to everything, or when you're not working, I guess, what are you listening to?
For me, it's really mixed, to be honest. I got influenced a lot by a former colleague who was Axel's direct successor, Soronja Hast, and she is sort of a huge music freak and about indie rock, and she's going to all the concerts, and so she sort of pushed some of that onto me. But I also started dancing 2 years ago, and there's some songs in the choreography that are sort of hammered into your brain until everything else is erased.
Is it ballroom dancing?
Sort of. It's a very German thing called formation dancing. So you have eight pairs doing a choreography for 5 minutes. But it's Latin dancing, so the same technique and so on. But anyways, and the choreography that we currently have is called Iconic, and then you have ABBA in there and Whitney Houston and
gotcha,
like the old classics, and that's a lot what I'm listening right now.
Cool. And for you, Axel?
Oh yeah, I'm listening to a lot of music. So I'm listening to classical music. I'm listening to I was grown up with rock, of course. So all kind of rock music, and so I like the guitar. For me, music is drums, bass, guitar, keyboards.
Hell yeah.
And yes, a singer, okay, and that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
So that's I worked as a FOH front of house mixer, and with different bands, and
cool.
I like this kind of music. I like jazz as well. So when it's not too free, so when
A little bit of structure,
when there's still some melodies or something like that, in it, and so some bands. I like Santana, for example. I like Dire Straits, Mark Knopfler, and Total, Peter Green, Fleetwood Mac. Oh my God, a lot of stuff. So blues rock, Frank Zappa. So that jazz rock, whatever, I don't know.
Yeah, that's
you really missed the opportunity to plug the heavies here.
I
mentioned one heavy metal band, and you could have plugged the heavies.
I like, all the old Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, all that stuff. Yes, of course. The new ones, yes, I'm listening to them as well. For example, my son-in-law is a big fan of Slipknot, and so he gave me something. I was like, yes, that's cool. So I like it as well.
Nice.
And so you are influenced by people giving you hints what they like, what's good. So same as for Jermo, someone tells you, hey, listen to that, I like it, and you like the person, and then you like the music maybe as well. Huh?
I was going to say that's one of my favorite parts about Munich High End. Well, all the events, but Munich High End is a great place for this. It's coming up here. Is the music sharing? Like last year, you guys know Sebastian Kedra? He does the Viking Weave cables. Anyways, he and I were nerding out about all the various new heavy metal stuff that we were listening to. So and then from that, it's like you take their playlist and you go, okay, now I got all this new stuff that I can listen to. So that's what it's all about. I think that's it for all of my topics. Blaine, Griffin, anything else from you guys?
Yeah, definitely. This is for both of you. There are a lot of, especially kind of in the last 2-3 years, there have been a lot of people getting access to 3D printers and stuff like that, making their own headphones, and starting small companies without really obviously the formal education in acoustics or anything like that, just kind of throwing stuff at a wall, seeing what sticks. And there's also been a proliferation of cheaply available clone measurement rigs that helps people have some sort of reliable my cat's about to jump off me test fixture for, oh my god, she's caught on my headphone cable. Distilling all of that, as two people who have designed plenty of headphones yourselves, what advice would you have for this kind of new generation of upstart headphone designers who are coming at this less so from a place of one, working for a large company and having a mandate to meet, but also not necessarily coming at it from the direction of maybe what we would consider acoustics, and instead just kind of basing it on whatever they can, whatever they know. Any advice that you two have?
I guess I have two pieces. So the first one we already touched on, and that was basically that you should really focus on what people value, and hopefully in a differentiated way. So something that people do differently. Like Heavies does it really intelligently, in the sense of focusing on that niche of heavy metal fans who are so passionate about that. Like doing a Swifty headphone is probably also going to be successful.
Yes.
Even though it's harder to get her signature on it, but still. So first getting really clear on what is valuable or who may value it, and finding a shortcut there if possible. So I think that is probably the most important thing, that you do something differently than anyone else, either on the way there or you create a new value entirely. And that is really hard because, for instance, like this openness thing in headphones, even very passionate headphone fans are not very versed in the topic. So they cannot really assign to it a certain worth. They don't even know that it exists sometimes, right? So it's really important to work in the value framework of the people who are supposed to buy the product. And then the second one is it's something my dancing teacher said yesterday. In German it's Mut zur Hässlichkeit, and in English it would be the courage to be ugly. And he said it after Dancing Care started their choreography, and afterwards it was sort of a masterclass session, and he asked for input of what we thought. And one person said, well, it was a very creative interpretation of the rhythm. And
being nice.
And she started on the wrong count, on the wrong beat. And the crazy part is that the pair then just pulled through for the entire song on the wrong beat, and they never let through that they did something really bad. And that is, I think, has a big analogy to hardware development, in the sense that at some point you have something and you have to roll with it, whether you want it or not. That is now your product out in the world, and you had the courage to put it out there, and you can be proud of it, and it's worth more than the armchair critic saying this is bad. But this is your product, and you should stand by it and not excuse yourself for it or something. So really, be confident in what you have. It will not be perfect, and you should still learn. You should still listen to your customers and so on. But just be really proud of what you've done. That's a big step that not a lot of people do.
Yeah. Maybe So you know what Ford might have said about listening to his customers.
Mm-hmm.
When I would have listened to my customers, they would have told me we want to have faster horses, not cars.
Yeah.
So listening to customers was one thing, but stay with your own new ideas. But this is the first thing that you said, Jermo. So it's good to have something that is different, and it's good to understand the basics.
Mm-hmm.
The basics of acoustics, you mean, or
acoustics of yes. So it should be fact-based, not just I do something and then something is coming out. Of course, it's important to listen and so say this sounds good to me or not. But when I see some of the test jigs that are out and people are just, oh my God.
Yeah.
No. So this is, So one thing that people need to understand is, okay, as soon as I do a measurement, I have failures. So this is, when I measure something, I will have failures. That is something that is in the measurement process always. So it doesn't matter if you measure the weight of something, or so there are always some digits that are wrong, and it's the same when you measure complex systems like headphones. Mm-hmm. You always do something wrong, but you need to know what you're doing wrong, and you need to know that you're doing something wrong. So you need to be aware of these things, and that from that point on, you can start, dancing like, yes, whatever. Great.
Dancing with the confidence to be ugly.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that's it. I think that it's a good word for ending the session. So I think that's great.
Yeah. So it's also why I'm a bad dancer.
Yeah, that's why.
No, but with practice, everyone can get good. That's my conviction.
Okay.
Even I'm not there yet, but I will be sometime.
I'm sure you're a better dancer than anyone on this stream.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah,
I'm sure.
You haven't seen my salsa dancing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So does this mean we're closing out, or do I have time for one spicy question?
Let's go. One more.
Yeah.
So for both of you, because you've been in the industry quite a while and you've been seeing the trends of things, what is your least favorite trend in high-end headphones, like of the last 10 or 20 years? Like, what is something that's happening more or happening a lot that really drives you nuts?
So what made me mad, but luckily it sort of tapered out to my feeling, is like the explosion of pricing, like after 2015 or 16, I don't know, but then suddenly you had the 4,000 euro Utopia, which became really, really successful. So hats off to Focal that they did something really good, but still it seemed like afterwards it just came like every new headphone was like 5,000 euros, every flagship, and it's nice if companies do like aspirational products which really move the needle. I have a lot of respect for that, but high-end headphones is, I think, a space where moving the needle is so subjective that everybody can claim that more or less. And that is where it becomes difficult for me. So if it were something more measurable, more objective, and the company does an aspirational product and it's super expensive, then I think fine. We've went somewhere now. But if it's just going in sort of every direction and you can't really tell if this is really now an improvement, then I'm thinking that's not a good trend. And luckily, I feel it has cooled down a bit. But still,
in headphones, it has cooled down, I think. In IEMs, I think it has only gotten more astronomical.
Yeah, there's like a $10,000 IEM that I saw recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's very similar. So these companies who spend money for research and really doing things based on research are people like Dan Clark are giving new impulses to the industry. This a relatively small company and all the big ones, they don't invest too much. And on the other side, there is people have no idea what they're really doing. Build something, put a big price tag on them and say, hey, we have something that is audiophile and stuff. I don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so there's still some people who know what they're doing. They're try to push the limits of audio perception with headphones, not only perception, so reproduction, perception, all these, to understand what's going on. And I like that very much. There's some positive things, but these negative things with the in-ears, I see them as well, but not only with the in-ears. So
well, you see it with cables, amps, DACs. The whole industry has all of this stuff in it.
that's the religious part of
it. 100%.
So so it's okay. So when people are lucky and happy, it's good for their life to spend thousands and thousands of dollars for something. So there was something, sack filled with sand. When you put it on your amplifier, the sound is much better and more silent and whatever. And this was just sand and sack filled with that. So some fabric, whatever, I don't know, and thousands of dollars for it. And say, oh my God.
Yeah, but
they should call it the sad sacks.
I feel
there
like
are also the stickers that serve as room treatment. We talk about those on stream occasionally, but there is a company that sells just a little, like a vinyl sticker that you stick on your wall that it says makes the soundstage of your speakers bigger.
Is that the acoustic dots?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, that's great.
I do think it's interesting that like two of our favorite, if not our two favorite headphone designers are like aligned with us on what we feel is probably one of the worst parts of the modern headphone industry, which is how crazy prices are.
It's one of my two least favorite things.
Yeah.
The other one being that nobody designs comfortable headphones anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one. I think headphones over phone them more. And actually, I also want to put a lighter note on it with examples like Dan Clark or Odyssey even. Like Odyssey is not the oldest company in the world, but they've I think they, in terms of planar magnetic headphones, they did the most in terms of make it meet very high serial quality. So for a long time for high demand, you were basically playing lottery, or not lottery, that's the wrong word, but your headphones could just crap out on you. And I think Odyssey was the first one to take it very seriously. And then they've now scaled up quite immensely. So they were acquired by Sony, as you may know. And then now they're in a bunch of Sony headsets. So they are now producing planar magnetic headphones in the millions. So you have these small fringe companies that are doing maybe not very like admirable stuff, but you have like just one company doing something really good, and it can scale up that and be very successful in the world and really change the world a little bit. So we can discuss whether a small dynamic magnetic headphone is so much better than a normal dynamic speaker. I don't know, but still, it's nice that they made it and that changed the world in a little bit, in a little way, and that is, I think, that makes me very optimistic. And it's not a huge company, still not.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Sankar is doing a great job, I guess, as well. So it's maybe it's that region, San Diego. Around.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's gonna do it for this live stream. I want to give a big thank you to Axel and Jermo for joining us today, and all the insights that you guys have given. It's not every day we get to talk to legendary headphone designers like yourselves. We also want to give a shout out to your guys' YouTube channel. What's it actually called? Is it just Grell Audio YouTube?
No, it's called Grell Sound Lab.
Grell Sound Lab, that's right. So go over. We'll add it to the description of this. But for folks who haven't yet seen it, if you guys are watching this, go make sure you check out their channel, Grell Sound Lab. And other than that, Blaine and Griffin, do you guys have any final notes here, just in general?
It was great to talk to you both. Axel, I haven't got a chance to talk to you the last few Can Jams. Jermo, we've never met, so this was a very nice meeting for both of you.
Yes.
For me to meet both of you again. Yeah, that's it. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to connecting with you guys in Munich in a few weeks here now. So
it makes
very
me
excited
really sad that I'm not going.
Yeah, well, you're going to go to Helsinki, so you know.
You guys.
Yeah, so for me it was great as well. So, and to the audience, I hope you enjoyed it. So it was a little bit very nerdy, but
that's what we do here.
Yep, that's what this is for.
Yeah. So in a way, you guys are the perfect guests for
truly.
us here.
Okay.
Yeah, Blaine, do you want to take us out?
Yep. As always, this is brought to you by Headphones.com, your #1 place to buy and learn about audio equipment, headphones, speakers, DACs, amps, and indeed cables. Although we don't have bags of sand yet, we can get. Sorry. All available with our 365-day return policy, so you can buy with confidence, knowing that you will end up with something that you're happy with in the end, even if it's not the first thing you went with. In addition to the store, we obviously run this YouTube channel, which is massively loss-making. So if you like this channel, please buy things on the store to support us, because otherwise we will starve. In addition to that, we have two communities, forum.headphones.com, which is our old school web forum, and discord.gg/headphones, which is, what everyone uses these days, but I'm really hoping you participate in both. On the forum, there's a thread we usually pull topics from. This time, obviously, we had two more important topics. But
I also do want to plug the fact that the OE1 topic on our forum has been very active, with
one of the most interesting
really
topics.
high quality discussion about the perception of sound and measurements and all of that stuff. So if you feel like you wanted to get maybe a little bit more into the OE1 and everything behind it and what people are experiencing than we did here, definitely check out that topic on the forum. There's a ton of good content there. Not from us, like from our users. Like. Yeah. We got some smart people on the forum that are
in the back. If we said, "Man, we posted some real good shit."
Yeah, we posted some bangers up on the forum. No. There have been a lot of really good contributions from other people in the community. So definitely check those out if you're curious.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
The
all right, guys.
Yes.
Thank you.
That does it for the live stream. Thanks to everybody for watching.
Thank you.
See you guys in the next one.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.